again. For
Saeed.
starters, tell us about the demonstration. I think you helped organize it as well. You are an Iranian Brit
Mhm.
yourself. Tell our viewers why it was so important for you and the rest of the demonstrators to be out there, and the message really you were trying to get across to our government, to the government.
So I mean, any Iranian, I'd say, probably has seen that war has been coming. I feel like I've had a sense of that since I was born, and particularly since the genocide started. I started to get actively involved in connecting Palestine to Iran, and through that process, I realised that there was a suffocation of discussion about Iran, and even within the Palestine movement, there's a sort of
I can.
sentiment uh, that is very pro-regime change. Um, so I felt I had to do as much as possible myself to find people who were supporting Iran, supporting Iran's right to choose its own form of self-governance. So, like a week before, I met Professor Chaim Bresheth, and we did a talk about the war coming, and then we spoke about what Stop the War doing. It didn't seem like they were waiting for the war to start, so myself and Chaim and a few others thought we'd take things into
Hmm.
our own hands. Are you there?
Nili, I understand one of the reasons, and you've been campaigning for Iran for quite some time, and based on my understanding, one of the reasons you embarked on this journey was that you felt that Iran was getting a bad rep,
Yeah.
and that Iran was not being given the light of day, or a fair representation by the media, um, specifically by the politicians here. Expand on that. How you saw? Give us examples of that, if you please.
I mean, like most people in this country only have an idea of Iran being a repressive regime that's bad for women. And, Sakina was just saying there's so much more to Iran and understanding Iran. The spiritual leader, how important he is. So, and the complexity of him as an individual, right? And now people like Rory Stewart are saying that he was a horrible dictator, rather than fully understanding how he connected with the people. He gave everybody a voice there, and that is something that can't be killed. So yeah, there's just this arrogance that prevents people from connecting with Iran, from fully understanding Iran, from understanding Iran's legitimate grievances with how it's been treated by Western powers. So yeah, it takes. There's an unwillingness there, and I've tried to talk to friends of mine. I've tried to talk to loads of people, and it's so deeply ingrained. It's just
Hmm.
it's going to be hard work to change that, but there are people here who see things clearly, and we're gathering, and we're going to ensure that our narrative gets through
Hmm.
as possible.
I mean, if you've been watching Sky News or the BBC all your life, as the late journalist, whose name now escapes me, said, uh, the BBC is a very well-funded, well-refined propaganda machine. And so, as you say, it's going to be an uphill battle trying to change people's minds about a country thousands of miles away from the British shores. But the UK, France, and Germany, John Pilger is the name of
Yeah.
the journalist, passed away recently. In recent years, the UK, France, and Germany issued a statement condemning Iran's response, as we heard one of the demonstrators say in those interviews, and not the initial U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran. Uh, Talk about this selective condemnation, which to a lot of
Yeah.
people could be a green light for even more violence.
Well, definitely. I don't know if you heard Nick Robinson on the BBC. implying that the rally should be banned, and that that we should be arrested and it should be illegal, and the status of Iran should be made illegal. But this goes way beyond our media. It's actually within our NGOs. It's become so thoroughly cultural. Like during the 12-day war,
Mhm.
I was a country coordinator for Iran at Amnesty International. I noticed the bias in the statement by Amnesty International that didn't call out Israel's illegal attacks on Iran. And, I said, well, look at your statement on the Russia-Ukraine war. Agnes Kalamard used all her power, all her force to call the UN General Assembly meeting and to challenge the veto power of the Security Council. So at Amnesty, they were just saying during the 12-day war to look at the civilians, and it's just incredible. So I called an emergency motion, and I got 86% of the membership voting for me. But then they blocked me at the Global Assembly, where the actual effective power is. So the point is, you can get that through to people. You can communicate these things to people, and they will connect with it. It's just like you said, Saeed. There's barriers there, and
Mhm.
if you manage to get on a show like Piers Morgan, what are they going to
Yeah.
do? They're going to try and humiliate you, or put you into a very negative box.
Exactly, to pin you down. And
Mm,
I like the analogy there between the Ukraine war and now this aggression against Iran. We saw what happened. We saw what the UK did, the self-imposed sanctions to not import Russian energy and the vilification of Russia as an aggressor or its invasion of Ukraine. But when it comes to the United States and Israel, as we saw, Starmer and his predecessor, Rishi Sunak, when it came to the genocide in Gaza, which, by the way, is still ongoing despite a so-called ceasefire, it was a whole different ball game, treated very differently.
mm,
Why is that, in your opinion? A lot of people are referring to the United Kingdom as a junior partner in that so-called special relationship. They refer to the UK as a vassal state, as a
mm.
satrap of the United States, and by extension, the Israeli regime. Your thoughts?
I think it runs quite deeply. I mean, like I'll be in activist circles, and I gave a talk the other day about Iran's right to self-governance, and I felt the audience were sympathizing with me. And then one of them later was just saying I wouldn't want to be run by a bunch of mullahs. So that shows this inability to listen, this unwillingness to learn, because it's not true, is it? I mean, the Iranian system is far more complicated than that. But there's this it's a mental barrier to impose a sense of superiority. So I have hope because in your last question, I said at Amnesty, there is potential,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it's difficult. I think there's potential to make a legal argument because obviously this is very illegal. You can make a dangerous an argument about economics, the cost of this war. You can make the argument about how dangerous it is for our country here. But I think
And
ultimately,
also, in addition to that, Nilly,
yeah,
the respect for international law. We have a
mm,
prime minister in 10 Downing Street who used to be the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, right? Um,
yeah,
should every country not be held to the same international standards? But when it comes, again, to Western powers, to the United States and their ally in the region, the Israeli regime, as I say, it's a whole different ballgame, different set of rules for them,
mm.
and another set of rules for the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, they've torn up the rule book, haven't they? International law just means absolutely nothing. And I guess some people are worried about that. Some people still want to protect that. And we have to communicate to the people in England that the rule of law has to have meaning. We have to ensure that for the protection of everyone. And we need to engage the global south and talk to them and give them space to present their side of things. But when it comes to this war, it's very, very black and white. Um, this is a war of aggression. There's no legal justification for it. Domestic human rights issues are not a legal justification for war. And there's a lot of propaganda around those human rights arguments as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
we should this is a multi-pronged effort. We should be looking at the international law approach. We should be looking at the narrative, the idea of legitimacy and the clearer picture of Iran. So we have to come at it from all angles, really.
You talked about Iran, that there is more to Iran than what the Western media or governments are telling their people. History shows that regime change and leadership change via air power doesn't work. Do
Mm.
you think that Donald Trump has fundamentally misunderstood the resilience of the Islamic Republic, and not only that, the Iranian people?
I mean, Starmer said he sort of hinted at the possibility of boots on the ground, actually. But yeah, there's definitely a misunderstanding of Iran's power here. I mean, Trump was advised by the Pentagon to not go into war, but you know they're high on their own power, high on their own propaganda supply. You know, they just they won't listen to reason. So I guess that ideal situation was a Venezuela situation, and they've seen that that's not going to happen. And you know, they can see now that you can't kill that faith, you can't kill that resolve. All you're going to do is
Hmm.
make it stronger. And you know, I can understand now why people in Iran will want a nuclear weapon. You know, the
Hmm.
British journalist Richard Medhurst made a very compelling argument for
Yeah.
that today as well. So yeah.
More than one person has been arguing that Iran should have acquired it a long time ago. But we have to understand that the fatwa that was issued was under Ayatollah Khamenei,
Yeah.
that the U.S. and the Israeli regime have assassinated, and with him, perhaps
Hmm.
that religious edict against acquiring nuclear weapons will also die. But we'll have to see. Iran has forever maintained that its nuclear program was not aimed at acquiring or building an atomic weapon. But again, staying right here in the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that the UK was not involved in the initial attacks on Iran, but as we know, the US is using UK bases to launch those attacks, namely bases right here on UK soil.
Yeah.
Does that
Which,
not make the UK an aggressor? One, and secondly, should the UK be complaining about its base in Akrotiri, Cyprus coming under attack
yeah.
because it is an aggressor in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's very worrying that the Starmer has approved the use of Fairford and Diego Garcia. You know, they can use the B-52s from there, from what I believe. I'm not a military expert by any means at all,
Mm-hmm.
but they can use very heavy
Mm-hmm.
bombers from there. So I don't think Starmer is going to hesitate at all, and they're probably preparing legal arguments to justify this as we speak. It's really the people now that have to say enough is enough. Sama, you've done enough with these 16 months of genocide. You've done enough by supporting people like Mandelson and McSweeney and the Epstein class. You've done enough from strangling the British people, from not providing the housing, and now from endangering us by bringing us into a potential World War III situation. The British people have had enough. It's time for a new
Mm-hmm.
government, is what I would say, yeah.
How, and you did say that in an interview with me earlier on Saturday that you thought it was the end of you hoped that it was the end of the
Yes.
Starmer government. But I wonder if anything would change if someone else took power. I mean, certainly if Nigel Farage were to be elected to number 10 Downing Street, this is a man who has already said, to the chagrin of a lot of the monarchists in here, the Iranian expats who have been calling for military action against their own country, that Iranian quote unquote refugees in that worst case scenario of a civil war or anything like that would have to be contained, maintained inside Iran or in regional countries, not in the UK, because the UK is quote unquote full.
Mm.
But as I say, I don't think that would make any difference. But you mentioned the Epstein class. This is also being referred to as an Epstein class war. How much of it to do with distracting the world from the fallout of the release of those files, the Epstein files, and also uh, as far as the Israelis' involvement in this, how much of it do you think has to do with Netanyahu distracting everybody from his own political issues as well as the ongoing genocide in Gaza?
Certainly, there's an element of that. Somehow they're trying to hold on to some moral narrative. Absolutely crazy concept. But I think this has been the
Mm,
plan all along, that before all the stuff about Epstein came out, Iran's always been the head of the octopus. And, there's always been a plan for the Greater Israel Project. So, yeah, it's a kind of
mhm,
distraction. But it has been on the cards. Like I said, many Iranians, many people have seen this coming for a very, very long time. What we need to do is start connecting the dots and not to be fooled anymore, really.
mhm. Um, do you see any shades of another, this looking like the Tony Blair era attack invasion of Iraq that the UK people here still remember,
Mm.
referring to Tony Blair as Tony Blair because he lied over the intelligence that was supposedly given him when he was prime minister to join George W. Bush, who was president of the United States at the time, in launching that illegal war on Iraq based on bogus intelligence on weapons of mass destruction, the fictitious weapons of mass destruction. So, do you think that we're at a point where the UK might be dragged into yet another forever war by a leader who should be at the Hague charged for war crimes?
Well, yeah, Blair and Starmer can keep each other in company in prison, as far as I'm concerned. It's ridiculous that we allow these leaders to rule us. I mean, we've had this time, we've had since Iraq to understand how this all operates. There are no nuclear weapons, and it seems like they're beyond creating these narratives now. They're just very open about what the plan is. Just perpetual war, right? And
Mm-hmm.
refugee crises that are not going to hit America's shores. They're going to hit our shores, and they just want violence in Europe. I mean, it's a very, very dark future that we have ahead. Our culture in England is like lots of people just have their heads down and carry on working. I try to talk to people. We're quite nullified here, right? Because we have this sense of
Mm-hmm.
confidence, because we've had this security for such a long time, but we have to stop separating us and them. And for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
personal. I'm mixed. I'm from both worlds, so
Yeah.
we have to do something about this.
Mm. Um, you're right. I want to go back to Amnesty and NGOs, international organizations. You said that there was hope that you could get out there, get your message across. Just looking at the past couple of decades, right? So when it comes to the Iraq War, Donald Rumsfeld, Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, all of them dead. None of them was dragged to the Hague. None of them faced justice. Tony Blair, now Sir Tony Blair, on Donald Trump's so-called board of peace for Gaza. Not only has he not been prosecuted, he's now been promoted to the board of peace. I mean, he's there in that pantheon of war criminals, yet to face justice. What hope is there? And not to mention that when it comes to the Hague, who was it who said that the Hague was established for African leaders, not European leaders? I mean, that's how
Yeah.
they view the world. Or Joseph Borrell, the EU High Commissioner, saying something about Europe being a forest and the rest of the world he described as a jungle. What hope do you have that these so-called leaders will someday face justice and be held accountable for the crimes they have committed, for the millions, if you will, lives that they have taken as a result of these military invasions around the world, the most recent ones in in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, if not, and previously.
I mean, I always have hope. It will be a very glorious day to see Blair in prison. It will be a very, very happy day for a lot of people, and it will be symbolic. It will be symbolic of a change. I mean, we have to act very quickly because obviously the situation in Iran, people are dying. You know, there's all these schoolgirls that were killed, and I've still seen in many, many circles they're still talking about human rights in Iran, human rights, domestic human rights issues, which is just crazy. But we need to act quickly because, as we know, Israel has a lot of nuclear weapons. Is our legal system fit to act quickly? So, like I said before, it's a multi-pronged effort. We have to try everything possible. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's also a path. There's like the legal approach, but then there's also a pathway to peace, which is about mutual understanding and
Mm-hmm.
real diplomacy. And I don't think America, well, we know America just isn't capable of that at all.
Diplomacy, Iran, we could all agree that Iran gave diplomacy a chance, that
Mm.
this war of aggression happened right in the middle of it, and more importantly, right as we heard that they were close to reaching a deal on Iran's nuclear program that would have put this issue to rest once and for all. No sunset clauses, nothing like the 2015 JCPOA. And there you have it. Netanyahu couldn't countenance that, just like he hadn't with the original nuclear deal. And so this war of aggression. I want to talk about the media again, if that's okay, and to ask you, just to borrow a quote from Julian Assange, the co-founder of WikiLeaks, who was imprisoned here, a political prisoner in the UK for a very long time before he was let go, um, who said that much of the wars around the world were instigated by media lies. Talk about the media accountability, at least in the UK media landscape.
Yeah, I mean, the media here is a complete mess. It's very, very, very toxic. Um, Accountability for the media. I mean, yeah, they've lied throughout the Gaza genocide. They're just a propaganda machine. They're not a media. They don't give people information. They're keeping people here nullified. They're creating wars abroad. We have to start building an alternative media. I don't believe we can fix the BBC. I don't believe we can fix things like Piers Morgan. You know, we just have to start doing everything possible to put the truth out there and pushing back on it where we can. But there's always, you know, within the mainstream media circus, there's always ways of and methods of blocking out that truth. You know, on LBC, they'll hang up on you. They'll try. You know, Professor Morandi has gone on Piers Morgan many times, and you know they always just basically try to humiliate him. So it's very hard to get a clear narrative out anywhere.
And
I
would
mean,
you
yeah,
would the BBC or Sky News or Channel 4 News invite someone like you with your background and with your views and anti-war, anti-imperialist, I suppose, on